here with a set of panelists who are really a dream team for me. Yeah, drawn from different parts of the country, different industry segments, rich experience profile, and a topic which is full stack HR. We probably have a full stack HR here on the panel as well today. The way we wanted to have this session is to have a conversation amongst ourselves, but very soon we wanted to engage with all of you out there as well, because this is a topic of great interest to every HR professional. And as we go along this discussion, we're going to have a couple of polls where we would want your point of view expressed through your technology. And if you have not downloaded the TecHeaRt app, please do, because that's where the poll is going to come out. And your points of view will be very, very appreciated. Thank you. So, if you were to look at full stack HR and the future roles of HR, the first thing that I am forced to think about is how much of the future are we talking about? Are we talking about tomorrow? Are we talking of a decade from now? And when we talk of full stack HR, are we conscious to talk about HR in all its different avatars, in all its different contexts, and not just get stuck with our immediate contexts? Yeah. So I want to set those questions afloat in our mind. Yeah. And there is also, when we think of the future, there is clearly something which we are not able to imagine. The science fiction of yesteryears have almost come true today. Yeah. And the imagination has no boundaries. And the impact of that to the future of work and future of HR is left to each one of us to dream about and either get scared about it or feel excited about it. Yeah. And I wanted the first poll to go out to the audience to get their point of view. When they think of future of work, future of HR, the impact of the context, do they feel scared or do they feel excited? What is their sense of the future? Can we have the results of that projected? So the votes are still coming. So 12 people have voted. I'm hoping more people put in their votes. So clearly, those who have voted so far are feeling excited. So there are some people feeling scared. Is that increasing? Yeah? Okay. So there is some relevance for this panel. I was wondering whether we needed to call it quits and walk away. Thank you very much. So it's going to be our attempt to try and see how do we feel about it. Yeah, are we feeling excited? Are we feeling scared? And what makes us feel the way we feel? Yeah? And to get the discussions kick-started, I'm going to invite each one of you to give an introductory pitch of where you are when you think about this entire context. Okay? And can I begin by asking Prabhakar to share your perspective of this topic, the future of HR, full stack HR. What's your thoughts?
Yeah. Thanks, Harish. And before I share, particularly a good moment for me, because I have my guru sitting here next right to me. These scores, the way they were fluctuating, reminded me of the stock market. And the ups and downs of stock market many a times has no logic or rationale. But I guess when we are looking at future also, most of us are responding to it from a very irrational perspective. So that's the first thing. So very quickly, 4 or 5 points that I wanted to share more as a context setting. Let me confess, I don't have any ability or capability to predict future. Definitely I can't see what's going to happen beyond 5 years. So when I look at future, I look at it in 3 different time horizons. To me, future starts from the next minute. Many of us, when we are looking at future, we start thinking 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. But as HR, it's extremely important to look at what it means tomorrow. So that's the immediate time horizon for future. Then there's a time horizon where we have a reasonable clarity on how things will pan out, which I would say between 1 to 5 years. And then there is something 5 years and beyond, which all of us can dream. The second perspective I wanted to share is, it's not something which is very, very recent, this whole discussion and debate of future. Let's go back to our own days. When I started my career about 30 years back, I still remember the first advice that my father would have given me is, son, whatever you're doing, think about your future. So it's not that previous generations did not focus on future. It's just that today it's getting amplified because of all the talks in social media, accessibility to information, etc. Now, the how part of it. In my view, there are 4 critical stakeholders when you are looking at future for HR. The first set of stakeholders really are the HR professionals who are probably in the age group of 45 and above. Fundamentally because they are the people who have seen different waves of what happened in the last 30, 40, 50 years and therefore have the wisdom and perspectives to help navigate the next generations. The second set is basically the HR professionals who are below 45. Third important set in my view is the academy. The people who are associated with academia, what sort of a role they would play in shaping the future. When I look at as an individual, the only thing that I sort of see with guarantee is the ability to cope with future. I think organizations, industries, society has survived for centuries and centuries. And to that extent, when you see a range of 77 to 85% excited about future, I think that's the way to look at it. If I were to look at it from a technology angle, we are all talking of machine learning. But there's a machine learning right here in each one of us. How many of us use that machine learning when we are wanting to look at ahead? And for that machine learning to work, which is sticking right inside you, it's important that all of us reflect on our own journey. And to me, reflection is at the core of how we are going to deal with our future.
Thank you, Prabhakar. Yeah, and as you speak about, starting from where you began, yes, for each one of us, I think the journey has been full of changes. Yeah, 30 years ago, HR meant you started work in the factory. That was the only place that you started. Yeah, there wasn't any other place to start. And then slowly, you started your HR career in the field with sales guys. Yeah, because HR started to interact with sales. Today, most of the HR people start off in offices and in client sites, as consultants. So the career of HR itself has shifted tremendously. Yeah?
Just to give a data point from yesterday, I don't know how many of you were there in the session on behavioral economics. And there was this entire discussion on how is it being implemented. I was saddened also because the true play of behavioral economics used to happen in collective bargaining and LTS. And somewhere that has just gone into the subconscious and not there in the domain of anybody, actually.
I sometimes wonder, is it because that is no longer in practice? Or is it that all the speakers are concentrated in the IT city of Bangalore and then don't know what factories are all about? Yeah? Not possible because Hosur is not too far away. Hosur is not too far away. But I think it's very important that we keep our antennas up for looking at HR and the topic of HR's future, not just where we are, but where HR needs to be and needs to impact. Yeah. So can I now request Shilpa to share her perspectives?
Okay. So good morning. Actually, Mr. Prabhakar, your points got me thinking. My career probably would have shaped out very differently from. I never worked in factories, as an example, right? And I recognize that each of us have had our careers panning out differently. But there's one thing that, from my perspective, has been my fundamental belief about HR, and which is that our primary role is to make our businesses perform, be relevant and succeed. And whether it is today or tomorrow or day after, that is not going away. So if that is our primary accountability, then we as HR professionals need to be thinking about the future of work, and therefore what it means for our organizations, the structures in our organizations, the operating models of our organizations, and what it means for HR teams and functions and our practices and processes that we currently work with. And when I talk about future of work, there's some things that will happen probably faster, and there's some things that will take some more time to happen. So as an example, we all now start talking about gig workers. Maybe that term might not appeal to everybody, but I work in retail. We have people who come and work with us in the peak festive season, right? And which is a workforce for me now. It is a reality. So there's gig workers. There is an augmented workforce, if you can call it that, with robots and some amount of automation happening. There is learning, which is now getting delivered in the flow of work. So there are a lot of realities that are actually impacting us. If I kind of delve on one theme and get all of you to think about what it means for us. So gig workers as an example, right? The composition of our workforce is changing. It is more diverse than it used to be. We were just talking earlier in the morning with Rajan. I have about 28% women employees in my organization. It's multi-generational, that is also a reality today, right? You have gig workers, assignment-based workers, project-based workers, that's also a reality. Now, what does this mean for us as an HR professional? All of us would originally talk about employee value propositions, right? One size fits all. That doesn't make sense anymore. You need segmented offerings for different components of the workforce that work for us. Now think a little further with me, right? What does it mean for a talent acquisition professional? It means that your workforce composition will not be all full-time employees. So you're thinking about how am I going to construct a workforce that has people who are temporary from different workforces, from different age groups and backgrounds. What does it mean for a rewards professional? How do you reward these assignment-based workers? How do you make your reward systems more transparent? What does it mean for a performance and talent professional? Your career paths now need to cater to the needs of different segments of your workforce. Again, one size fits all will not work. Rajan was talking about high potential, but the way we've looked at talent pools will not be the same anymore. So essentially what this means is HR is getting rewired. Some will happen sooner than we expected, some will happen later, but it will also imply that we as an HR function need to be thinking about how we rewire ourselves, how we re-optimize ourselves, and how we look at the processes and practices that have probably till now worked in a certain context and therefore need to evolve.
Great, thank you Shilpa. So the context in which we find ourselves is changing so dramatically, and that is in itself posing pressures and demands on us in terms of what do we need to engage with, how can we actually add value to the stakeholders who come to us, and that's a shifting context and stage. Thank you. Rajan, can we have your perspective? You see a lot of organizations as part of your work, yeah? So your context is actually pretty wide in that sense. So what I see?
So I have three dimensions to talk about, building on some of the points being already made, but three large dimensions. One is technology. So when I say technology is changing our social lives. So that social life we bring to work life. So that's going to be a big place. I'll talk a little bit about that. The second one which I see is all the geopolitical, I'm just taking it a little larger aspects. So lots of things are changing in the geopolitical environment. The organizations are going to be looking at, are going to get impacted because we all live in that and we work in that. And the third aspect that I look at is that the organization shape size is getting impacted by, we hear this term a lot, millennials, but if I just break it down and say that how the individual is responding both to the organization and to the society, that is going to impact the role. And let me now build on that, all three of them. So you picked about PE, and my fundamental belief is behavior economics has to be part of the HR guys' curriculum. We can't walk away from that, because I say that for two reasons. The first reason I say that is there's an interplay of psychology and economics, which is happening, and that's what Shilpa talked about. We had to respond to businesses, right? What business wants. So economics is there, and we so-called propagated as people who understand behavior. So if there's an interplay of behavior and economics, we can't walk away from it. So you have to understand BE, as it is called, and let's start with BE 101 for all HR professionals. The second, which I think on the same aspect, I think you can't walk away from technology being an essential part of life, and I don't think, at least people, as we were saying, if you were to cut the people 40 and above, understand technology as a tool. We may understand technology. So I was just having a conversation on the side. Let's say if the CEO comes next year and says, I want to buy the best HR system for the organization to respond to the needs of the employees and the organization both. Get me the best system. Now I can get you the best system understanding HR, but I have very little knowledge of what is happening on the tech world, which is the latest technology, why will it help, how much should it be invested for, what is my amortization of the technology, should I look at it for 5 years, will it get changed in 3 years, I don't know anything about it. And I need to know that to make a decision, a business critical decision. If I'm going to take a 5 crore decision or a 10 crore decision on a technology system, I need to know what it's going to do, what it entails. And from the larger impact of geopolitical to the organizations, I think the whole dimension of agile, and I was listening to Peter Capelli, and he was trying to decipher agile, and he said agile, we talk about it, agile is, and I'm sure most of you know, I did not know it at least a year ago, agile is nothing to do with structure, agile has to do with people and processes. So if all the IT guys are talking about agile, and it's all about people and process, that is the center of HR to me, and we have very little understanding of it, right? So from my perspective, there are 3 large changes, as I call it, all to technology. So understanding business is table stakes. You can't walk away from it. As the HRBP used to be called, and when 20 years ago, Dave Ulrich came with the concept of saying understanding business, that is table stakes. You cannot work in HR without understanding business. So that's off the table. So I say technology replaces it. I need to understand tech very well. The second is org. Org is off the table, because if there are only agile, those workforces which are going to make differences. And I hear that not only for IT, but I hear it other functions coming in, but some of the functions will never get impacted by it. That is also true. The routine functions will never have agile. It will be stupidity to do that. But the other functions, if it is to have agile, so then the whole piece is broken into individual and the process. So I need to be fast on the understanding the individual. And the last is this whole mindset of employees. Earlier, maybe it was a unionized mindset. It's a complete opposite to it. It's a complete individual mindset. It is me. So how do I now get to plug into this me to understand what, as an HR professional, I need to do, whether it is through data. And that's my last point on that. On the data, I think in HR, stats and maths are going to play a very, very important role. Both those subjects which HR have been hiding away from, say, oh, I don't understand it, but I understand people. You can no longer do that. If you are living in that era, I think that era is over. It's not even future, it's over. You can't walk away from saying, I need to understand data, I need to understand the trend lines, I need to understand correlations, causation, everything. Because if the individual is going to drive it and not org pattern, then that data becomes very important for us.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's painting a very global, macro, and trending stuff that you're seeing around. Fantastic. And Vasanthi, your intro piece before we get into a discussion around this.
And the reason I keep coming back to the NHRD panels is because of such wonderful panelists who just allow me to build way, way beyond what I brought to the table. Thank you for making it happen, and you will see why in a minute. I don't think near. I only think minimum 5 years, more likely 20 years. Okay, that's my job. So I want to actually start with what Rajan said. And when I was reflecting, I think there is no HR role for HR people in the future. There is only role for business leaders to become HR professionals. I don't teach HR people, I teach only business leaders. And every year, I have hundreds of business leaders who walk up to me and say, Vasanthi, I want to move to the HR function. Tell me what capabilities I need to augment, because you seem to believe that between psychology, sociology, anthropology, political science and economics lies the space of a HR professional of the future. Completely agree with Rajan. Business is passé, organization is passé, and I have no way but than to draw upon a research that I did on looking at what are the future-ready competencies that leaders will require in organizations with NASSCOM. 2.5 years study, at the end of it, exactly what you said, that the external environment is actually shaped by 4 challenges. The first of the challenges, technology. Second one, relentlessly demanding customers. Traditional competitors disappearing, and uncertain regulatory context. If this is the context for everyone where they are operating, what are the capabilities of the future that you need? And I realized in the study what we got was, and I was delighted yesterday to listen to Yves Joss talk about it, is that we are reaching the same place, which is sensing the future, framing and equipping the organization for that future, agility in thinking and execution, but above all of us, I think, particularly in India, have never seen difficult times for 20 years now. And therefore, we have got a set of heuristics that worked in growth that are not going to work for stable growth, because our very own heuristics turn into biases when we have to kind of go ahead. So when I look at all this full stack HR, I think HR will go to line in 10 years. So what happens to HR? I think HR will go through 10 years of high tech and low touch. And that's the journey I see around me. But high touch, yesterday we saw on the CEO panel, requires high tech in the yesterday's CEO panel we saw what requires enormously high touch. Enormously high touch. And I shall tell you that I interface with the digital world periodically. I am technologically challenged, and I see the kind of tensions that it poses for me, because my every day is actually managed. My teaching day on the digital is managed by 22-year-olds who don't understand HR, who don't care what kind of experience I bring in, but are telling me how that visual design of that game should be so compelling. And there I have to sit with them and educate them on the purpose of my existence. And I think that's the journey for HR. And 1 minute, and I shall close with this. I think the edifice of HR is being shaken by automation. My student's thesis, and I'm happy to present sometime at NHRD, basically says that automation is going to pose challenges for us that we don't understand. My only request to you is, if automation is happening in your organizations, please go and be a part of it, because the edifice of HR is job description, role description, and that edifice is demolished. With every automation, there is creeping scope, creeping into the job description. Do we know how to manage people without job descriptions? Flexible contracts, thank you, Shilpa. If that is the heart of cost-based arbitrage, we have reached our limits. In fact, we have regressed HR and moved away from what we stood for, which is employee champions, Where are employee rights? Who cares for employee morality? Where is the culture, the edifice of organizations, whose responsibility it is? And I think that is where HR of the future is headed.
Thank you. You can't have asked for more contrasting points of view. Yeah. So we feel that business and delivering value for business is where our future stakes lie. We also at the same time feel that it is championing human beings, employees and people is where HR can add its true value. Yeah? And the context is both global and local. Yeah? It is technology driven as well as driven by what people want, desire and seek for themselves. I was just going through the competencies of HR as it has evolved over the years, and interestingly there was an NHRD partnered survey by Dave Ulrich, the Michigan Law School competency framework, and some very interesting competencies that they speak about for HR. The center of, or the most popular competency as seen around the world today is that of strategic positioner. They say HR folks will have to get to the aspect of positioning themselves, their work and their context in a strategic way to all their stakeholders. And that competency is going to be critical and key, because otherwise HR is going to be questioned as to its relevance. The next most important one is the credible activist. The ability to be the activist on behalf of the people with the same set of business stakeholders, but in a credible way. So these as two critical ones. And then there's a whole lot of technology-driven competencies. Technology and media integrator, analytics designer and interpreter, and an interesting one called compliance manager. And I think that's because of all the regulations, not just regulations, the expectations, the promises that businesses make. If you made a promise, you got to keep the promise. And if you don't keep the promise, there is an issue of compliance. And therefore, HR is actually playing a compliance manager role as well. And then come the interesting, esoteric, traditional ones, culture and change champion, human capital curator. Found that very interesting, yeah? So you actually have the job of curating human capital and total rewards steward. And in the middle of all of this, we have the paradox navigator. Yeah, we all know what HR life is like, yeah? Is it this or that, yeah? Is it yes or no? Is it more or less? And paradox is the context of our lives. And navigating that paradox is the centerpiece of the HR competencies. And we have a paradox in this panel right now, yeah? So do we align ourselves with business, or do we align ourselves with people? So what's the role that we want to take? Perspectives for the panel.
Actually, for me, it's not an either-or choice. Harish, both need to coexist, and I've heard. So I read this somewhere. This is not my line. I won't take credit for it. But I think the future of work is actually to rehumanize HR. It is not to eliminate humans. It is to elevate humans. And the reason I say that is, when you think about technology, when you think about automation, yes, some of the standard manual, monotonous, repetitive jobs will go away. The transactional work will reduce. But then it also puts a responsibility on us as HR professionals to be able to provide platforms for our employees to reskill themselves, to learn the skills that are more complex, that will not get replaced by machines. A favorite example of mine, I think somewhere it touches a chord, is in a hospital, you could have all kinds of machines that will tell you whether the patient has the probability to live, but only a human being will tell you if he or she has the will to live. And that's the human part of. So there is, keeping our organizations competitive, helping them win, be successful, remain relevant, will coexist with the fact that ultimately our job is to also elevate the human part of our work.
Thank you. But my question continues. What part of our job is going to be about elevating the human being, and how much of our job is going to be about providing all the demands of our stakeholders, which seems to be largely inhuman?
I think, Harish, I would beg to differ there in terms of when you're saying the expectation is to be inhuman. I think business is saying deliver business. The how part of it is actually left to us. If we choose to take the easy way out and take the inhuman route, that's a choice that we are making. I don't think the business is saying that HR in the quest for business be inhuman. But that's where I would come. The second perspective I would say is when we are talking of people and going forward, my own sensing is the definition and scope of people that we engage with is going to change significantly. HR increasingly will have to engage with people who are outside the conventional organizational boundaries. HR would be called upon to sort of help business succeed in a society that is becoming extremely complex and volatile. If I am setting up a factory in some remote corner of Orissa or Bihar, if I have to earn the right to exist in that particular society, who better positioned than HR to help navigate the presence and right to be in that particular area? A second interesting dimension that I am seeing going forward is HR would also be called upon, and I am seeing it increasingly, is getting into areas again where person or a people are at the core. This even in terms of consumer psychology. Engaging with industry bodies and industry associations, which in earlier years would predominantly be the realm of business or marketing, etc. And the reason why the shift is happening is businesses are also realizing that HR can speak the language of business, which was the reason why they were not being engaged. And if coupled with their understanding of human psychology, whether it's individual psychology or group psychology, that's a very, very good combination. In my view, it's an opportunity that is there. It's up to us whether we would want to grab it. Shilpa mentioned about paradox. Harish mentioned about paradox. I would agree with Shilpa. It's all about our ability to manage the and. We are more comfortable with or. It's neither this or that. I'll take from what Rajan was saying, is today it's all about me, me, me. I would agree with that in one level. The difference is, in the earlier years, it flew from collective to individual. Today it is from individual which will influence the collective. This whole amalgamation of me, 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 imagine the type of collective influence it has on social media and how organizations panic. We saw it happening when Nestle, we saw in ITC when Ashirwad went through that crisis, that one me in some part of the country transformed into a huge collective, and in both the organizations, HR actually had to play a key role in helping navigate that. So that's one data point from a very, very immediate perspective.
Thank you. Rajan.
So I have a different point. Okay, I'm very clear on two things. The first one, HR exists for business. There is no identity of HR without business. So it's the first point I want to make. And if we have any ambiguity on that, I think we should just get that out of our head. My perspective is no HR without business. So if we say, oh, business wants us to do this, business wants us to do that, well, yeah, that's what a business wants. Now you go figure, right? And my second point, I completely endorse Vasanthi's point. There is no HR role in the future. It's only a role of a leader. And I make my point, I borrow from Ramcharan. Ramcharan says, HR needs to have a round trip ticket. Now, what does he mean by that? He means that HR cannot do HR job. He or she has to have a round trip ticket for sales. You go and do a sales job and come back and plug it into your HR. You go and you do a job. You're not a tourist. You are on 1 year to 2 year feeling the pain of the sales guy selling whatever he or she is selling. You are sitting in finance and making a capital decision to say, okay, where the hell should I get the money for? And how do I present my case to a banker to say I need money from XYZ? You live that life. So you need to have a round trip ticket. Now you can be qualified in psychology or anthropology or economics, and all those qualifications can come together and you can say that I'm an HR professional. That's the functional aspect of it. But that functional aspect of it is not put to the use of, if you're in business, again I repeat, the single most aspect of business, and now largely talking about 3 people, planet and profits. So all 3 P's, if you're not focused and delivering to that as the ultimate outcome from business, I think there is no role for HR. So I am provocative, and I think I don't see it any other way. I see that those 3 things have to be, there is no paradox for me. The single most thing is serve business.
But I was reminded when you were mentioning about only if business is there, HR is there. I was recollecting my factory days. We used to tell the union at that point of time, only if factory exists will the jobs exist, and only if the jobs exist can the union exist. So I think that philosophy still continues.
I'm interestingly, beginning to think, you go to the HR schools today, the profile of the class is more than 70% engineers. It's not psychology, it's not sociology. And business is demanding technology adoption, is expecting productivity and profitability, and therefore the engineering skills are being completely leveraged. What does that mean? But we're also talking about the human championship, the collaboration of the men and the machines, and it is not an or but an and. Where does this come into play? This human element, the psychology, the behavioral aspect of behavioral economics. Where and how do we bring it to play? Your points of view.
I'd love to go on this, and thanks Harish, great reflection question, because I just looked at the last 4 PhD students that I have had. One is a chartered accountant, 2 of them are engineers, and 1 has done nutrition. And these are the 4 people whose papers I've been able to publish in top tier journals. And I'm just reflecting on what is it that made it happen. And I want to use my most recent PhD student who submitted last week on looking at automation. He understood technology on the shop floor because he had worked on the shop floor. So when he came back and began to share his interviews, the first thing he said is, there is a problem here which I'm not able to explain. And he said, why is everybody talking about job elimination? I want to tell you that there is an integration, there is a decomposition. Look at the language that he was telling me. Decomposition of jobs is happening. And I'm sitting there and saying, explain. And he said, when this machine gets changed this way and increases productivity, the org design of the machines has changed in this manner, and therefore my back is facing 2 machines. Earlier, I used to face front 2 machines, so I had 2 operators in front of me, and now I have 1 operator at the back. And this is causing stress because I can't turn around to talk to the operator. So I have to talk to the operator during the breaks, and it is not like talking when I am at work. And therefore it increases the stress of the operator, which transfers to the first line supervisor, because I am going with complaints about machine. And the supervisor is saying, what's the span of machine-human in your department? Now, imagine somebody narrating like this, an engineer with an engineering understanding who's asking me, help me with the psychology and sociology of organizations. Yeah? I don't know how much we are ready for that, Harish.
Interesting. And so, we are not too sure as to whether we are ready for it. And should we prepare line managers to do HR, or should we prepare HR managers to do business? Which is a better approach for us now?
The open house debate.
I guess the way forward would be, again, it's like the and, so to say, but I would see increasingly it will be more people who are business leaders. Some of us at some moments will overplay certain functional expertise or levers, and I probably foresee a time when you will not have MBA in HR or MBA in finance, etc. It will more evolve to a more universal MBA part of it.
So, I'll take you back to not future but past, and I'll draw on the example. My sister is a bank officer, and her qualification is CS, but she does marketing, she does communication, she's doing retail, she's a zonal head for business right now. Okay, and imagine that is happening in our government organizations and our services. And our private organizations want to build so much of silos. It is for lack of any other phrase, pun not intended, inhuman, right? Because the human being is capable of so many other things. But if you silo him and say, hey, you are only HR, you can't do business, it's unfair. And if you just look at it from the perspective of if our government organizations can give such a play to people, why is it that we are constrained in private organizations to say, okay, you need to do only this? If you're a business leader, borrowing on Prabhakar, if you're a business leader, you can do HR, you can do finance, you can do marketing, you can do those. And if that brings the best, and some of the best organizations, and I used to work in ISHR a long time ago, and IR was never handled by HR professionals. IR was done by engineers. IR heads used to be engineers, not HR guys. And IR was a separate department than HR. Krish is sitting here, he would know that, right? So, so organizations have in the past done that. It's not about only future, it's just how do we borrow from some of those great practices.
No, absolutely. Shilpa, you want to?
Yeah, so I kind of, again, building on your point, business leader had HR as a functional specialization, continue to leverage it, but think about some of the work that we do, right? Rajan spoke about understanding digital, right, and technology. I see our job also not just to know and understand technology, but be able to drive it. Because if that's what the organization needs, so does that make me an IT leader? I have to ensure that the training programs, whatever shape and form they might be in right now, are delivering the consumer experience I want. Does that make me a marketing leader? Ultimately, goes back to what Rajan said, delivering business outcomes, and it means sometimes removing barriers to your organization's performance. Sometimes it means creating an environment of collaboration or innovation. All of that are what business leaders do.
Great. Can we have the last poll on for the audience as I wrap up? Yeah. Interesting. I'm beginning to imagine a future of businesses practicing HR, but not necessarily having HR professionals within the business. HR becoming a function like medicine, doctors practicing, like lawyers, legal counsel, made available to business, but not necessarily employed by business. Because HR is about the study of human beings and championing people, and in business everybody ought to do that. So you can't recruit only HR folks. So I'm beginning to see HR profession becoming a gig economy maybe in the future. People like me outside the organization serving many organizations at the same time.
Marketing for you. You're
Yeah.
doing self-marketing.
Futures are secure, you're not aligned to one employer, you're not constrained by that person, and you're doing what you believe is right, championing the people, aligning to the business of the day. Today it's Infosys, tomorrow it's Wipro. Yeah? And that's probably where you can live yourself true to your conscience. Yeah, and the last poll out there for you, what do you think HR needs to be governed by? Technology or heart? Your verdict, please. In your apps. Thank you for the panel. Lovely discussion as the poll comes out. Yeah, thank you very much for your committed, convinced arguments on this topic. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And thank the audience.